Poker tells rules. Author Selzer-McKenzie. Let me share a closely guarded secret. I just returned to my forest in the Ozarks after spending most of last week with Doyle Brunson in Las Vegas. We filmed a poker course for Vegas. That should be announced shortly, although Amplify, the main site covering all kinds of online lessons, in addition to the gambling ones found at Vegas, isn't saying much in advance of a worldwide announcement. I did coax this statement from their VP of Creative and Content Acquisition, Kip Marcus. Vegas. Is honored to be creating a course with two legends, Doyle Brunson and Mike Caro. This course will bring a whole new level to those who are serious about elevating their game. Working with scholars like Caro and champions like Brunson, prove once and for all that the game of poker is 99% skill and 1% luck. My only quibble with that, as my students know, is I teach that poker is 100% skill in the long term, but much, much more than 1% luck in the short term. In any case, stay tuned for pending Amplify announcements. I'm having fun with this question and answer series. I get to pose the questions and then answer them, and that saves time, because I don't have to wrestle with questions that lead to uninteresting discussions. Also, I don't need to mostly ignore a question by giving a polite and perfunctory few sentences in response, before cleverly steering my answer to something I think is more important. Today's questions relate to poker rules. If you're ready, so am I. Question number 11, what's the worst rule in poker? There's no doubt about this one. The worst rule in poker, very common in many tournaments, is that you can't tell opponents truthfully what cards you have. I call it the idiot rule. That's because it only stops you from giving information about your hands through verbal assertions. If both you and your opponents are idiots, of course, the rule would make sense if you were always telling the truth about your hand, and opponents could rely on your word. But you'd have to be pretty dumb to always tell the truth, and opponents would have to be pretty dumb to rely on your word during the course of a poker hand. The essence of poker is deception. It isn't just a game where you play your own cards as if you were in a bingo parlor. In poker, you look for tells. You employ psychology, and you manipulate your opponents if you're capable of doing do. When I'm in a poker game, my goal is sell my image and steer opponents in directions that will bring me the most profit. As Doyle Brunson says, poker is a game of people. One of the significant ways I treat poker as a game of people is to talk at the table. Sometimes I do this just to involve opponents in conversation, hoping that their responses will give me clues about what type of hands they're holding. Sometimes I'll babble about the strength of my hand, gauging my opponent's reactions. I might say, "Are you sure you want to be betting that small pair into my obvious pair of minions?" I might declare directly what I claim to hold. Usually, I'm lying. But once in a while, for the sake of deception, I actually tell the truth. That's poker. Can't tell the truth. But the worst rule in poker states that you can't tell the truth about your hand. For instance, you can't say, I have 3 aces, if you actually do. That sucks. It sucks because, by rule, anything I say must be a lie to be legal. So, if I say I have a full house, opponents are given information. They know I can't have a full house or I'd be in violation of the idiot rule. So, I guess, if I wanted to tell someone I had aces full, I'd have to say something like, one thing I can say positively is that I don't have aces full. If I said that and didn't have aces full, I'd be telling the truth and in clear violation of the idiot rule. For that reason, astute opponents would know that I'm lying, which is legal, and that I absolutely do have aces full. The idiot rule not only makes no sense, it actually gives opponents reliable information about opponents' hands, when they would otherwise be guessing about whether the declaration were true or false. Question number 12. What's the most annoying rule in poker? Okay, so this isn't a big deal, but it drives me crazy every time. It's the rule that governs the so-called chip races in poker tournaments. Every so often, the tournament structure dictates that smaller denomination chips need to be removed from the tables and exchanged for fewer chips of higher denominations. At these times, players trade all their smallest chips for bigger ones, but usually there are stray small chips left over. For instance, if we were taking all the $25 chips out of the tournament, when moving to $200-$400 rounds, we'd exchange $25 chips for $100 chips. Fine. Let's say you had $325 in 25 chips. You'd buy 3 100 chips, but you'd have 25 left over. What happens with that extra chip? Lots of methods were used during the evolution of poker tournaments. 1. The surplus small chips were left in play. 2. The surplus small chips were confiscated. 3. A bigger chip was given if you had any remaining small chips after buying what you could. 4. A bigger chip was given only if you had at least half the number of small chips required to purchase a bigger one, otherwise you lost your small chips. And 5. A bigger chip was given only if you had more than half the number of small chips required to purchase a bigger one, otherwise you lost your small chips. Then the chip race was introduced. Using this method, you got one face-up card for each small chip, and the highest card won all the straight chips, exchanged them for bigger ones, and, assuming there were still a few left over, either got an extra big chip or didn't, in accordance with the procedure. Reasonably fair.